Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So recently I did a video talking about how retail has died. And in that video, the comment section was really good because there was so many people who had agreed with me and a lot of people who had disagreed. And like the people who had disagreed with me were people who were saying like, dude, you should come down to this particular area. The traffic is everywhere. Restaurants are full. Other people are saying, dude, I totally agree with you. I'm a business owner. Things have slowed down. Phone calls are not nearly as much as they once were. Now, you can see it right in the comment section, and then other people who are just kind of giving their observation about, like, just current conditions or whatever. But usually, if you look at the disagreement or agreement within the comment, it's usually somebody who is doing an observation of their surroundings, and the people who are agreeing with me are business owners. Think about that for just a second, because businesses are still employing people even though they're not doing well. Those people are then driving to work and going to the restaurants, right? This is something that people have to think about. Just because your area is doing well doesn't necessarily mean that the businesses that those people are working for and continuing to operate as if things are doing well, like paying the employees without laying them off yet, those employees continue to operate as if nothing has happened. Like a lot of them have pulled back, and that's why I'm seeing such the effect at the retail store that I am. But a lot of people are saying, no, man, look, all the traffic, look at all the restaurants, right? But yes, they haven't experienced the layoffs that are going to be happening. It happens in sensitive areas first, and then it moves into the places that are more robust. And that's the reason why your particular area hasn't seen the significant change yet. Give it time. I mean, just look around. There's signs of liquidity issues happening everywhere. It is not a surprise to me whatsoever. And now that's the reason why I'm able to call out that retail has died, is because literally the phone calls that I get are a representation of the things that are happening throughout the entire economy. When I get phone calls from logistics managers looking to haul freight around, and I say, man, we use our own freight, we don't haul, we don't use outside brokerages, and they're surprised by that, right? Those people are in search of stuff to haul around, and they had a time in their life where they didn't have to search around that hard. Freight was everywhere that needed to be moved. Do you remember the idea of hiring the National Guard to free up the ports, the port congestion that was taking place out there? 100 freighters sitting off the coast of LA. What do you think, what kind of economic impact is that going to have when you do not have that stuff going through the system? It's going to create a lot of orders. People are looking for that stuff. They can't find it. They're being allocated against. They're not getting it in time. They're ordering more than what they should. By the time that stuff gets in, the people don't want it anymore. So now this is what we're facing. New orders are slowing down. Manufacturing is slowing down. Here they're ramping up all this manufacturing operations here in the United States. And at the same time, they're finding difficulties finding labor to operate within this new manufacturing base. You see the misallocations of funds that are taking place right now. This is going to create liquidity crisis. When people are expecting the payment and it doesn't happen, what kind of repercussions come from that? Think about that. This isn't deep level thinking. This is just the obvious. This is like what's going to take place if this continues on. People ask me all the time, and it was just like, how come it is that you don't see the inflation scenario like everybody else? And I ask them, how come all the inflation left lumber? Can you explain it? Because if you can't explain how come all the inflation left lumber, because lumber's back to its pre-pandemic price. In fact, it's going all the way back to probably 2017, 2018. Prices we experienced 5-6 years ago before all the inflation scenario that hit everything. If you can't explain how come lumber is so cheap right now, how come plywood is coming down? Actually, it's starting to move back up, but that's a different story. I mean, here I'm selling OSB at the same price that I had sold it pre-pandemic at times. It's a very volatile price building material. So once you can explain that the establishment of the supply chain of lumber snaps right back because it's not part of the global supply chain. It's a complete domestic supply. Everything about it. Like every single corner of it is completely domestic. And even if it's not domestic, the other part comes from Canada, which has reestablished its supply chain on lumber almost immediately. In fact, lumber should be a lot cheaper considering that the added cost that has gone into it. I mean, the futures prices have changed. They now have an added rail cost to them that is going from the Pacific Northwest to Chicago. And that added rail cost still does not have lumber future prices above what they were pre-pandemic. Think about it. If you took that added rail cost out, the futures price would be a lot cheaper. See, this is what we're experiencing today, but very few people actually look at it for the realism that it is. They take into account the propaganda that they are experiencing out there in the news. And I mean, I'm trying to point out that propaganda. I really am. Like, this whole 2% target coming from the Federal Reserve's monetary policy is completely inaccurate. That is not what the Federal Reserve is doing. I've tried to explain it time and time and time again. You know, I just don't know how else to put it together. I put the information together so many times. I've called out Time Magazine. I've called out CNBC. I've shown how they are spreading the propaganda of a 2% target that doesn't exist. It just simply does not exist in the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. They're going for a 2% average inflation rate over time, and I explained how they do not have to shoot for 2% in order to achieve a 2% inflation over time. And this is one of the craziest things for a lot of people to understand because they are so locked in on this. And it's no wonder when you see so much propaganda being spread to make sure that that idea is locked into the people. Because if they had any other idea that inflation was going to be, or the interest rates were going to be anything than targeting at 2%, then there is no way that their monetary policy would work. I've proven it. I've shown it so many times. You know, I don't mean to sound like frustrated on this video because I'm not really frustrated with what I see going on out there. It's exactly how I anticipated. I'm not frustrated with monetary policy. I'm not frustrated with the interest rates. I'm not frustrated with anything that's taken place within the economy because it would be totally expected if you had followed the Federal Reserve speeches and their monetary policy like I have. And I know nobody's really doing it just simply because if you just Google average inflation rate over time, just Google that and look for how many articles of people who are actually talking about average inflation rate over time. Nobody. Literally nobody. Go and Google 2% target. You don't even have to put the word inflation in, just put 2% target. And you are going to find ungodly amount of people talking about it. See, this is the problem that I see. This is why I can explain how come lumber was able to, when it was at its $1,700 per thousand, I was able to call out that lumber would go back to its normal price. And the reason I was able to do that is because of my understandings of monetary policy. And I know this is very difficult for a lot of people to understand. I mean, there's high-level people who are major CEOs making $100 million a year doing, trades or whatever they're doing, who don't understand this. Uneducated economists, you let me know.